It was late at night in a quiet city neighborhood. Streetlights cast long shadows across rows of parked cars, and most of the homes were dark, their families asleep. But one police officer wasn't patrolling to keep the peace. He had another plan. Officer Miller, a tall white cop with a hardened look on his face, slowly scanned the street. His eyes locked onto a sleek black SUV parked neatly in front of a modest brick townhouse. He smirked. To him, it looked like the kind of car a suspicious man would own. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small plastic bag filled with white powder. It wasn't real evidence, it was bait. Miller crouched low, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. With steady hands, he opened the car door, which had been left unlocked. He placed the bag under the driver's seat, his lips curling into a grin. Then he stepped back, already rehearsing the arrest in his mind. What he didn't know was that the car didn't belong to just anyone. That SUV belonged to James Carter, a black man in his early 60s. James wasn't a criminal and he wasn't an easy target. He was the director of the FBI, one of the most respected law enforcement officials in the entire country. Moments later, James walked out of his home, dressed casually in a dark coat, heading toward his car for an early morning drive to the airport. He noticed Miller lurking nearby, flashlight in hand. "Good evening, officer," James said calmly, his deep voice steady. Miller straightened up, putting on his best act of authority. "Sir, I need you to step away from the vehicle." "Routine check." James raised an eyebrow. "Routine? At 3 in the morning?" But before James could ask more, Miller opened the driver's side door and shined his flashlight inside. Well, what's this?" he said dramatically, reaching under the seat and pulling out the planted bag. He held it up like a trophy. "Looks like we've got a problem." James looked at the bag, then back at Miller. His face stayed calm, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "That's interesting," he said softly, "because I know for a fact that bag wasn't there a minute ago." Miller smirked. "Tell it to the judge. You're under arrest." The tension in the air was heavy. Miller thought he had total control. But James didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a black leather wallet. He flipped it open slowly, revealing his badge. The gold letters gleamed under the streetlight. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Director. Miller's grin vanished instantly. His face went pale as if the ground had just disappeared beneath him. You're... Yes, James said firmly, his voice cutting through the silence. "I am the director of the FBI, and I just caught you planting false evidence in my car." The officer froze. His hands trembled as the weight of his actions came crashing down on him. In that moment, he realized he hadn't just tried to ruin a man's life. He had tried to frame the very leader of the nation's top law enforcement agency. James didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out in anger. Instead, he looked Miller directly in the eyes and said, "Do you know what your job is, officer? It's to protect the innocent, to serve the people with honesty and integrity. And yet here you are, doing the exact opposite." Miller stuttered, trying to defend himself. It was just..." "No," James interrupted, his tone sharp but controlled. "There is no excuse for this. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed the uniform you wear, the oath you took, and the trust of the public." For the first time in his career, Miller felt completely powerless. His arrogance melted away, replaced by shame and fear. His eyes watered as he realized what this meant for his future. James took a step closer. "You see, justice has a way of revealing itself. Lies, corruption, hate, they always come to light. You thought you were targeting just another man, someone you could push around. But every person you target is a human being with dignity. And tonight, your actions exposed the truth about you, not me." Silence filled the street. Miller hung his head, unable to meet James's gaze. James sighed. He could have ended Miller's career on the spot. He could have humiliated him. But instead, he chose a different path. "You're going to answer for what you've done," he said. "But I want you to remember this moment. Not because you got caught, but because it's never too late to change. You can walk the path of corruption, or you can rebuild your life with honesty. The choice will be yours." Other patrol cars soon arrived, called in by James himself. The tables had turned. Miller was placed in the back of a squad car, his head low in disgrace. As he was driven away, he glanced back one last time. James stood tall on the sidewalk, not with anger, but with calm authority and quiet strength. The neighborhood was silent again, but the lesson that night was louder than any siren. Prejudice and corruption may try to hide in the dark, but truth and integrity will always bring them into the light. And so the story ends with a powerful reminder. Hate divides, but kindness heals. Lies destroy, but truth sets us free. We are all equal as human beings, and no one is above the law.